the first competency, competency 1. This is the importance of choosing a topic that is appropriate for your audience and your occasion. So you will be given criteria for each presentation. You'll be told this is an informative speech, this is going to be 5 minutes, or this is going to be 7 minutes, or this is a persuasive speech and this is how long. You will then choose a topic that's appropriate for that purpose, for the audience that you're giving it to. So you wouldn't want to go and speak to a group of middle school students about investing and try to convince them that they need to start. You want to choose something that's appropriate for who you're speaking to, the occasion that you're giving the presentation to, and certainly the fact that you're giving this in a class to your peers virtually is going to affect some of the topics you choose and the way that you present them. You also need to consider your time constraints. Those are incredibly important. I want to share an example because one of the first things you do at the start of your presentation is create an attention getter to draw people into your topic and help them connect with it. So that's the very first thing you want to think about is how do I get my audience's attention and connect them to that. I had a student who once was giving a presentation on the importance of investing, and he had selected the right audience. He was giving it to his peers who were college students, and he wanted to say, it is time to start saving. You're not too young to do this. And it was a persuasive presentation, but he started out and he was jiggling coins in his pocket. Nobody knew why he was doing this at first, and all of a sudden he took the coins out and he threw them at the wall. And everybody's attention certainly peaked, and they didn't understand exactly what was going on at first, but they were paying attention. And then he said the very first words of his presentation were, if you're not investing now, you might as well throw your money away. And everyone kind of chuckled, understood what he was talking about. And then he went into his thesis statement, his preview of his main points, and transitioned into his first point of his body. So that's a great example of an attention getter. Some other ways to get your audience's attention is start with a quote, give a startling statistic that will get their attention, give maybe you can bookend and a beginning quote with a quote that you're going to tie up at the end with your closing statement so that you're kind of wrapping up the same way that you began. Maybe a rhetorical question where you ask the audience to consider something right as you began, or an actual question where you ask the audience by a show of hands how many of you are investing. So these are ways you can get the audience's attention, and maybe you can think of some others as you're sitting there as well. Competency 2 talks about considering your general and specific purpose. So your general purpose would be, are you informing? Are you persuading? And that more specific purpose moves into that thesis statement. What is the claim you're making? What is it that you're informing about? What is it that you're persuading about? And how are you breaking it down according to the main points that relate to the larger topic? Again, you want to consider your audience. Your audience analysis is key. You want to set the tone right in that introduction for the audience so they have a nice clear roadmap and they know where they're going. You will, at the end of the speech, in the conclusion, you will remind them where they've been with a summary review, which really again wraps it up very nicely and provides a sense of closure for them. But at the beginning, your declarative thesis previews what is ideally usually 3 main points that will reside in the body. But this is competency 2, the clarity of that purpose and that roadmap are important. In competency 3, we want to have very reliable and current and meaningful support material. So this is your research, and it can also be your stories. We talked about storytelling, right? From the article from the Princeton Review. Communication scholars are great storytellers. Well, stories have great meaning, and testimonials from other people's stories have great meaning. So utilizing these in a very meaningful way to support one of your main points can have high impact and can be really important especially in persuasion, when you're trying to convince us or move us from one point to the other, or get us to change our minds about something. So stories tend to be about 22 times more memorable than facts alone. When you're telling a story, you want us to connect perhaps emotionally, which is a rhetorical strategy called pathos. And the other thing that you want to do is use it very appropriately. Just think about the storytelling, the use of visuals, the way that you're using rhetorical strategies, and how to use them wisely, and perhaps just enough, the balance of utilizing them. Think about yourself, or think about a family member. And when we try to persuade, maybe even politically, when you push too hard, somebody digs their feet in and then they won't be moved. So that's something important to think about. But you want to cite your research sources verbally. So you can say, when I said stories are about 22 times more memorable than facts alone, I wonder if some of you were thinking, well, who said that? According to what? According to who? So it would be far more, have far greater impact if I had said, according to Jerome Bruner, its stories are about 22 times more memorable than facts alone. You want to cite where you're getting your information, or where this was said, or when this was said, who said it, because this adds to your credibility, and then somebody can fact check you. And we're in a world where fact checking is important. And so our examples, our explanations, our testimonials, our statistics need to be backed up with their source references. You want to have effective visual aids as part of competency 3. And that is something we're going to look at with something called the SCRAP method. Being simple, having contrast, using repetition, having a pattern to things, having alignment, and using proximity. And this is all for specifically speaking to your slides, your slide creation. And then we're going to talk about the use of objects, or if you're demonstrating something, or having a video clip, how long is appropriate versus giving a 5-minute speech and having a 2-minute video. Is that appropriate? No, probably not. That would dominate too much of the presentation. So thinking about things like that, charts, diagrams, displaying them properly. So thinking about the ways to enhance your presentation with visuals becomes part of your support as well. Okay, competency 4, we're halfway there. You want to use a clear organizational pattern. We talked about laying out that roadmap. Well, now you make sure you're following it throughout with the use of really clear transitions. Your audience should be able to tell when you're moving from one point to the other. For instance, I'm saying, okay, we're moving to competency 4. That's really a very basic transition statement, letting you know we're moving on to the next point or the next competency. You'll use transitions as you move from one main point to the next, from your introduction to that first one, from your third main point to your conclusion. And you want your audience to feel very certain where you are in your presentation at all times. So they don't have the benefit of looking at an outline. They should still have an idea where they are in the presentation and where you are in the presentation at any given moment. If you're laying out a really clear organizational pattern for them, you've given a clear preview, you're going to give a clear wrap-up and summary, they should know exactly what they've heard and what they learned in order to be clearly informed and persuaded. So that includes a nice tie back in the conclusion and a closing statement that is incredibly clear. I wish I could say I haven't heard a number of presentations where I wasn't exactly sure the presentation was over, but I have. And that means your closing statement wasn't clearly stated. And sometimes you just trail off and then you're kind of just standing there and people aren't sure if you're done or not. So make that closing statement have a really clear indication that you're done. Again, a nice quote. Again, maybe a rhetorical question that ties back to the opening or the attention getter, or clearly say thank you at the end and walk off the stage. Close down your video. Make it very, very clear that you are done. Don't just trail off without something that has impact, because that's really precious real estate at the end of your presentation because it's your last chance to leave that impression you want to close with.